everybody. My name is Leslie Pyle, and I am the founder of HireMyMom.com. And I'm excited today to have Kelly Wittman with me with Witt and Company. She is a brand strategist and a designer. And I had fun learning just a little bit about her backstory. I'll let her tell more, but I would call her, similarly to me, an accidental entrepreneur, and learning kind of as life comes along, finding that we have a passion for something and just jumping in with both feet. And I know, Kelly, I saw that you had sort of a run in with your two labs that led you to start your whole idea of working remotely and being an entrepreneur. So tell us more about you and how you got started.
Yeah, absolutely. So as you mentioned, I'm Kelly. I own Witt and Company. We're a brand strategy and design studio based in Minnesota. And we work primarily with service providers and small business owners and really help them step into their expertise through consistent and cohesive branding. And Leslie, as you mentioned, my journey is definitely an accidental one into entrepreneurship. My background is in advertising and marketing, and more so in the nonprofit space.
Mhm.
And 6 years ago now, our two wonderful black labs were outside playing, and they ran into me and shattered my knee. And at the time, I was a part-time personal trainer and then full-time working at a nonprofit. And while I was recovering from surgery, knee surgery, and realized that running and high impact sports was completely off the table, thus, really pursuing personal training was kind of off the table for the time being, I discovered a home renovation blog. And through there, that kind of opened up this whole new space and realm of digital entrepreneurship and possibility. Prior to that, my understanding and experience of entrepreneurship was more traditional in terms of opening up a brick and mortar for a restaurant or a clothing store, something like that. So the idea of having a relatively simple way to start a business and to make income was really intriguing for me. And through shortly thereafter, my husband and boyfriend at the time, we bought our first house and we were renovating it, and we started our own blog as a way to keep friends and family up to date and connected with what we were doing. And I started offering digital marketing services to other bloggers. And just because that was my background and it seemed like a natural fit, again, kind of just leaning into this idea of what is organically growing and just kind of saying yes and going for it. And then through there, about, I would say maybe 6 to 9 months after I had a connection through the nonprofit space, asked if I would help with her husband's branding and marketing. And I absolutely fell in love with the branding process. And that was about 3.5 years ago now, and decided to pivot full time into the branding and brand strategy and design space, and absolutely love it.
Yeah, I love hearing these stories because, so many of us don't necessarily start out thinking we ever are going to have our own business or start doing our own thing, whatever it might be. And I know that's going to speak very loudly to our audiences of moms who either are looking for a remote job or they're looking for clients for their business. And then on the other hand, we have our small businesses that a lot of them are remote virtual businesses. Some of them are brick and mortar, but they are always looking, to hire these remote professionals. And a lot of, both sides of these audiences did not anticipate being an entrepreneur. It's like, it's just one thing after another. And once I think you get a taste of, working for yourself and building your dream, it's hard to go back.
It's so hard. I often think about, oh, could I, and I think we've all been there. We're having those moments of like, why am I putting myself through this? It's very stressful. It's not always sunshine and roses, but then when I think about, well, can I go back to the traditional job? And my gut reaction always is no. And it's just one of those things of, even the quote unquote worst day of being a business owner and the ability also to work remotely. I'm in my second trimester of having our, for pregnancy. And I'm realizing even more so, which I know connects with all of your mama listeners. I know how helpful and the flexibility of having your own business and being able to work from home has been thus far in pregnancy. And I'm excited and honored and thankful that I'll be able to experience being a business owner as well through the growing of and the development of our child, to have that
Yeah.
flexibility,
Yeah.
and not have to need to go to the traditional 9 to 5 in office.
Yeah.
So yeah, to your point, I think it's great. You get the bug and you just kind of get hooked.
Yes. And I would say, when I started 25 years ago, I always thought, okay, well, when my kids are in school, I'll probably go back to that traditional job. But, that flexibility, even though now my youngest is 13. And so even still having that flexibility is golden. And I know that's one of the main reasons moms enjoy the flexible remote lifestyle, is because the flexibility as a mom is really worth a lot.
It is. And it's something that I definitely didn't understand. I think if you're not in this space, you don't understand the flexibility or the benefits of it.
Mhm.
But then once you get into it, you realize how much freedom that it can bring to your life, even the little things, right? I think about like how much gas money I'm saving. I used to
Right.
commute, an hour and a half to work each way. Um, and really in Minnesota, I had my longest commute was 3 hours. And thinking about that from the perspective of it was just my husband and I at the time, but if I had kids and needing to pick up with daycare and things like that, um, it's definitely took a pause, and one of the catalysts for why I wanted to go full time into my business, so that
Yeah.
I would have that specifically schedule flexibility and not have to worry about the commute and things like that
Right.
don't necessarily think about. Which right now, I mean, in times of COVID, it's not an issue, but hopefully, when the world starts to open back up again and people start going into the office, you'll be able to make that decision or have those abilities to be more flexible.
Right. Okay, well, let's jump in. I know people are eager to hear your viewpoint, your advice, your expertise on branding. So let's start off with, what is the best place to start with building a brand?
Yeah, oftentimes, especially when we're new business owners, and I think this kind of goes for both if you are, your personal brand, so you're promoting yourself or pitching yourself as, someone to be hired, and also if as a business owner, right? We often think of, logos and maybe the visuals as our branding. And if we have a logo or, we have our fonts and our colors and we have a brand. And I would encourage everyone to think about more so the strategy. And what I mean by that is really the communication of your business or your brand, whether it's a business brand or a personal brand.
Mhm.
And like thinking about things of like, who do you want to serve? Who is that ideal client? And what problems do they have? And what are you actually offering?
Mhm.
How do you want people to feel when they experience you or your business? And why are you doing this in the first place? A lot of times we forget the emotional impact that having and making a connection with that person, whether it's an employer or a customer, there's a lot to be said for that. And the why of really getting into the root of why you started your business, or why are you looking for a remote job opportunity. That's what builds that emotional connection, and that's what builds trust with the recipient and the receiver. So getting started at those 4 pillars, that's usually where I recommend,
Right.
especially when you're diving into branding, and if you're just getting started, or if you've been in business for a while, those are
Mhm.
great places to go back to and revisit, and making sure you have clarity around those 4 items.
Right. And I can see how important that would be if you are the small business owner trying to get into the mind of your typical client and customers. And what do you think they are looking for, and what would draw them to your business? Am I understanding you correctly?
Yeah, absolutely. And oftentimes, when we're just getting started, I know I experienced this in my own business as well, and I'd be curious to find out if this was the same for you. We think, well, I'm going to serve everyone, right?
Mhm.
And I'm going to offer this to everyone, and everyone is my ideal client. But when we get into that mindset, we forget that the whole point, especially as business owners, is to solve a particular problem. And that problem is going to be specific to the person that's having it. So when you can get really clear on who is that person that is experiencing this particular problem,
Mhm.
the stronger your communication is going to be with them. And then, okay, why do we care about that? Well, the stronger the communication is, the more connection you're going to have with that person. So for example, if you are selling, let's say you're a health coach and you want to work with everybody, that's your client. You're a health coach and everyone is your client, versus if you're a health coach for new moms within that have, I'll use my own experience, that are, up to 6 months postpartum, the
Mhm.
messaging and the way that you're talking to that person is going to be a lot more specialized. And they'll feel can be a lot of competition and saturation in the way that we can differentiate ourselves, our businesses, to be clear about that who and tailor your relationship, build trust them into then your circle of influence so you can do business with them.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. That's awesome. So tell us what's wrong with just having a logo.
Yeah, well, going back to this idea of if we start with the logo, which is the fun thing, right?
Right.
Especially when you're just getting started with a business, that's always, especially when I talk to new business owners, oh, I got my logo, I'm so excited, which I
Right.
understand, and it's kind of like that visual representation of your business, and there is a lot of excitement in that. The problem with starting with the logo is we haven't done that foundation work on who is it for. So kind of going back to that example that I had of that health coach,
Mhm.
if you create that logo or maybe you buy a logo off of Etsy, or you work with someone on like 99 designs, or something like that, and before doing the brand strategy work,
Mhm.
what happens if your logo is tailored to someone, tailored to men? Maybe you have a more masculine logo, but you realize after doing the work, if you
Mhm.
started with your logo and then did the work on that brand strategy and communication, you realize, no, I actually want to work with new moms.
Right.
I would imagine that the logo is going to be different, right? The visual representation of your brand will be different depending on who you're serving. So when we dive into the visuals first, we can get lost and or lose sight of the purpose of our business and our brand, which is, who are you serving and how do you want people to feel when they experience your brand? Things like that go into and guide the visuals, so the design and the aesthetic of the logo.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. So why is it important to have a consistent brand for your business?
Yeah. So when we think about consistency, I would encourage everyone to think about your own experience with businesses and when you're searching for services on your own.
Mhm.
So, for example, I am in the process right now of bringing in a new virtual assistant, and I am looking at their website, and then I usually will hop over to Instagram, or I'll go to their Facebook and just kind of check out who they are. Like, what's their personality? Are we going to get along? Do we have kind of the same? What do they value? Things like that. I'm just looking to check them out.
Mhm.
And I had this experience a few times where what they were portraying on their website was vastly different than what was being portrayed on Instagram and or what they had on Facebook. And I got confused as the potential client, a potential customer, of like, well, are you the person that's on the website, or are you the person that's on Instagram, or are you the person that is on your Facebook page?
Mhm.
And when we think about consistency, and that's providing the same experience throughout your digital platforms and throughout the different touch points that someone would have with your business, that builds trust. Know what to expect so that to book your services.
Uh-oh, I think I lost you
There
for a
we go.
second. Okay.
We're
Okay.
back.
We're still recording. I don't know what happened, but you went away and you're back. But you were saying something about building trust.
Yeah, so just the idea is, when you are experiencing someone or going, looking for something, when you have that consistency
Mhm.
across the various touch points of your brand, people build trust with that. If there are inconsistencies, so kind of going back to that virtual assistant example, I don't know who would be showing up on that call if who they're portraying on Instagram is different than what they have on their website is different than what they have on Facebook, right? So
Yeah.
the idea and the goal is to have that consistent experience across the touch points of your brand so that when they do get on the phone with you or they decide to take that next step, they know what to expect. And that's part of, building trust within your brand and building that trust with the potential client and consumer.
Yes, that makes total sense because I've had the same experience when looking at someone's resume or considering them for a position and then, wanting to see how they line up in other areas. And it is very important, number one, to be consistent, but to also be aware that all of your social media channels that are open to the public, you want them to have a more professional feel to them. And if it's something just for fun, that's great, but you might want to consider making it private just for friends and not the whole world to see.
Right. And especially, for those job seekers, right? As a personal brand, these questions definitely apply to you of how do you want people to experience you as a personal brand because they're hiring, right? You,
Yes.
and whether or not you're intentional, people are going to perceive you a certain way.
Right.
And the power of branding is that you can control what that perception is based off of what you're sharing and being intentional about how do you want people to experience you and who are you really out there for, who are you serving,
Yeah.
what exactly are you offering, going back to those four foundational elements. And to your point, um, people can see everything online. I think we forget that,
Right.
especially in the moment, right? Maybe you're out with girlfriends and you're having a great time and you post you guys, drinking and having fun and, which is awesome. But is that contributing to the experience that you want your personal brand to provide, especially if you're in this space of wanting to get employed?
Right.
It's always just kind of something to think about. And you don't have to do it from a disingenuous place, but just be intentional,
Right.
and at least cognizant of what are you sharing and what is that doing for your personal brand.
Yes. Yes. 100%. So my last question that I have for you is, when is it okay to do it yourself? And when should you hire a professional for your branding and your brand strategy?
Yeah. Getting started, my recommendation, especially for new business owners, is there's nothing wrong with doing it yourself. We're scrappy, and you're just getting started, and you're putting your feelers out there. You're kind of in this space of just throwing spaghetti at the wall and figuring out what's sticking and what's not. And that's a really great place to be in that DIY mode of just see what works and take action. That's our goal, especially as business owners, which I'm sure you see this with your community. And I know for you and like what you're helping them do, you just want them to get going, right? We
Right.
want our clients and our community to just take action, to get out there, to show up,
Mhm.
start getting in clients, start making that revenue and getting your experience. And then once you have more clarity on who you really want to work with and what you will be offering and
Mhm.
how you want people to interact and experience your brand, then that's a really great time to really invest in a branding professional because you have that information and you're not spending a significant amount of money only to change it because you don't know. You know because you've been taking action for a while
Yeah.
and you have the experience to back it up.
Yeah.
And that's really when the magic happens, right? I mean, the whole point of when we think about working with a professional is so that they can take what you have and bring it up a notch. So
Mhm.
if you don't have that experience or you're not sure, then there's not much that you're giving the branding professional to work with. Versus if you say, okay, I worked with Susie Q, I want to clone her. So can we talk about branding and creating a brand that's specifically targeted to the Susie Q's of the world so
Mhm.
that I can have more clients like her? And then from a personal brand perspective, it kind of depends. Same idea. If you're not sure what you want or how you want to portray your personal brand because you haven't been out there taking action, I think the same rule applies. There's nothing wrong with throwing spaghetti at the wall, getting your feet wet, and
Mhm.
figuring out what works for you,
Right.
and then taking the time to invest in branding once you have some clarity.
Yes, I agree 100% because I know that a lot of times in this remote work world, a candidate will work for a specific person or a specific industry and find out that just not
Work.
doesn't work, they don't enjoy it, doesn't feel right, whatever it might be. And then let's just say that was in the Amazon fulfillment world or whatever. And let's say she then gets an opportunity to work with a coach, and then all of a sudden everything about her lights up. And she knows, okay, I only want to work with coaches going forward because I'm aligned with the way they think or whatever it might be. Then, like you said, then you can say, okay, now I know who my main audience is. Not that you never can work for someone outside of that coach industry, but you know what lights you up, what fills you up, what you're passionate about. And then you can speak to that audience more clearly versus going off on the very first thing you do and think, I've got to have a brand, I've got to do everything right now, just top notch. But I think what you said about starting slowly and figuring it out is a much better way to approach it.
Yeah, well, I think especially as women, we have a tendency to want to be perfectionists, right?
Mhm.
And to do everything perfect from the beginning. And we forget to give ourselves permission to just try. And it's okay if it doesn't work out the first time. I use this example a lot in talking with my own community. I spent the first year of my branding side of my business work targeting bloggers because that's where I came from. And
Mhm.
then I realized that wasn't a good fit for me and made the pivot to more service providers and small business owners. So, from that perspective, it's never too late. The whole point is just to get out there and try. It's okay if it's not right the first time or even the second time or the third time,
Right.
because you learn something, which I'm sure you found this in your own business as well. With every iteration and every even just small, minute step forward, you're learning something, whether it's what is working or what isn't working. But I think both are equally valuable. We can forget that. We think we need to have the perfect logo and the perfect brand and colors and fonts and go all in on this one thing and never change our mind, which
Right.
is a fallacy and it's something that holds us back, which is heartbreaking. Which I'm sure you see this with your audience and community as well. It's
Mhm.
we forget that we can mess up and not do something perfect.
Right. Yes. Grace, grace, grace.
Yes.
Great. Thank you so much, Kelly. You've shared so much great information and insight. If somebody wants to learn more about you or get in touch with you, how are the best ways to do that?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Leslie. It was a pleasure to talk to you. And if anyone does want to connect, my website, WITT, and company.com is the best place. We have a weekly newsletter that goes out. We share lots of business and branding tips for the small business owner. So that's got great resources as well. And we do have a brand resource library that has a lot of workbooks and PDFs and templates if you are in that space of in the early stages and you're DIYing and you need to consume some information on branding, that's also a great place to start.
That's awesome. Well, thank you again, Kelly. And we look forward to keeping in touch and seeing how your business continues to grow.
Thank you.